Good day everyone. My name is Jan Aris S. Makaspak and I am the officer in charge of the Local Government and Regional Coordination Bureau of the Department of Budget and Management. Today, I will be discussing session number 7, which covers recovery financing, local disaster risk financing strategy. The session provides an overview of the different sources of funds that can be tapped for disaster rehabilitation and recovery programs, projects, and activities based on existing laws and policies. Essentially, the possible funding sources for the government for the implementation of rehabilitation and recovery interventions include the annual general appropriations as may be provided in the General Appropriations Act. We also have the Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund of the local government units. And then we also have the Disaster Risk Insurance Payout Proceeds, the Official Development Assistance, the donations from development partners, non-governmental organizations, private companies, and individual persons extending donations or cash or in kind, and the funds from the government financial institutions and government-owned and controlled corporations. We will be discussing these options one by one. First is the Annual General Appropriations Act. This is the most usual funding source for rehabilitation and recovery programs, projects, and activities as may be provided in the Annual General Appropriations Act. So these items under the General Appropriations Act include the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund, consistent with Section 22 of the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010 or Republic Act number 10121. And then we also have the regular budgets of national government agencies, and we also have the special funds for rehabilitation and recovery, which may be included by Congress in the Annual General Appropriations Act, and the unprogrammed appropriations and earmarked revenues. Finally, we may also have the supplemental appropriations as may be enacted by Congress. The second option for fund source is the Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund, or what is popularly known as the Local Calamity Fund. This fund is the primary source for the rehabilitation and recovery programs, projects, and activities of local government units. This is the appropriation of not less than 5% of the estimated revenue from regular sources which shall be set aside by local government units to support disaster risk management activities such as but not limited to pre-disaster preparedness programs, including training, purchase of disaster response and rescue equipment, supplies and medicines for post-disaster activities, and payment of premium on calamity insurance. The allowable programs and projects that may be charged against the Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Funds of the local government units are listed in the NDRRMC DBM DILG Joint Memorandum Circular Number 2013-1 dated March 25, 2013. While the whole Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund can be utilized for post-disaster rehabilitation and recovery activities, it is to be noted that the 30% Quick Response Fund of the total Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund can only be utilized when the local government unit is declared under state of calamity as declared by the local sanggunian concerned. The next option is the disaster risk insurance payouts. The proceeds from the insurance payout can be another source of funds for repair, reconstruction, and rebuilding of the insured damaged public assets or government facilities and infrastructure provided under the insurance contract or guidelines. There are indemnity and parametric insurance facilities for national government agencies and local government units. But at the minimum, all public assets at the national and local levels should be insured with the GSIS or Government Service Insurance System as mandated under Republic Act number 656 or the Property Insurance Law. The table on your screen provides a sample of risk transfer instruments through insurance. The Department of Finance Disaster Risk Financing and Insurance Strategy has been prepared and may serve as a guide for planning purposes. Moreover, risk layering strategy, where a combination of different financing instruments for disaster events of varying risks may also be designed for national and local levels. Depending on the scale and impact of a disaster, based on the overall financing strategy, the government has an option to tap into the available ODA. The government usually avails these types of financing options for big impact disasters which involve substantial funding requirements. So among the available funding sources that may be tapped under the Official Development Assistance Fund is the loans and grants that may be acquired by the government. We also have the contingent credit, the multi-donor trust fund, and the humanitarian assistance and emergency funds. Let's discuss these items one by one. Contingent credit is another form of loan financing option to provide immediately available funds to the government after a disaster. While contingent credit loan is generally intended to finance immediate needs such as response and relief activities, it can also finance early recovery interventions or rehabilitation projects. And as a quick and flexible source of financing, it can bridge financing while other sources of funds like bilateral aid and other emergency construction loans are being mobilized following a major disaster. This box number 14 on this slide outlines an example of a contingent credit, which is the Disaster Risk Management Development Policy Loan with the Catastrophe Deferred Drawdown option of the Philippine government with the World Bank. On the other hand, a multi-donor trust fund is a form of grant financing involving multiple ODA partners. The concept of this multi-donor trust fund involves resources from different ODA partners being pulled together with a single set of agreed terms and purposes or objectives. The pooled funds are then administered by a trustee and governed using an oversight structure. Access to and approval of such funds are dependent on the fund's terms of agreement. On this slide, box number 15 explains how the multi-donor trust fund was utilized for disaster recovery after Typhoon Yolanda. Another fund source for the government for rehabilitation and recovery programs, projects, and activities is donations. Development partners, non-governmental organizations, private companies, and individual persons may extend donations of cash or in kind as a form of assistance to the affected areas of a disaster. The sixth option is the funds from government financial institutions and government-owned and or controlled corporations. Government financing institutions or GFIs and some government-owned and controlled corporations or GOCCs have lending facilities that can provide financing for rehabilitation and recovery projects of local government units. Under Section 297 of the Local Government Code of 1991 or Republic Act No. 7160, the local government units are empowered to enter into loan contracts or credits with banks and other lending institutions in order to finance the construction and development of public facilities and infrastructures, including implementation of housing projects and other capital investment projects. Among these government financial institutions and government-owned and or controlled corporations that offer these financing options to the local government units include the Land Bank of the Philippines, the Development Bank of the Philippines, the Social Housing Finance Corporation, the Home Development Mutual Fund or the Pag-ibig Fund, the Small Business Corporation, and the Government Service Insurance System. The table shows a detailed list of financing assistance programs by selected GFIs and GOCCs for disaster-stricken areas and affected individuals. For the Land Bank of the Philippines, they have the Countryside Financial Institutions Calamity Assistance Program, which offers term loan rediscounting to eligible country financial institutions whose loan portfolio were affected by natural calamities. This can be tapped by local government units in developing a loan program that will provide financial access to private individuals and entrepreneurs to recover from their disaster losses. Another program offered by the Land Bank of the Philippines is the Calamity Rehabilitation Support, or the LBP CARES. This program offers loan restructuring for additional 3 years and rehabilitation credit for local government units, small and medium enterprises, home buyers, cooperatives, non-government organizations, and countryside financial institutions affected by a disaster. This can also be tapped by local government units and implementing agencies in developing a credit program for affected micro, small, and medium enterprises, cooperatives, farmers, and fisher folks to be used as a start-up or working capital, and for individuals or community organizations to be used for rebuilding their damaged houses and community facilities. For the Development Bank of the Philippines, or DBP, they offer the Residential Real Estate Financing Program, which offers financing support for shelter production and tenure for employees in the public and private sector, overseas Filipino workers' families, new households, and homeless Filipinos. The loan can be used for land acquisition, site development, shelter construction, housing microfinance, and project preparation financing. This can be tapped also by the local government units and implementing agencies in developing post-disaster housing financial assistance packages for the affected population that will supplement the regular National Housing Authority or LGU transitory and permanent housing programs. Another option for the program of the Development Bank of the Philippines, or DBP, is the Water for Every Resident program. The program finances water supply programs of private companies, water districts, local government units, PFIs, and MFIs for their capital investment, working capital requirement, refinancing of existing loan, consultancy services, and other project preparation activities. This can be tapped by local government units and implementing agencies in developing a loan program that will provide financial access to private companies, including government-owned and or controlled corporations, to recover from their disaster losses, including rehabilitation, reconstruction of damaged facilities and equipment, working capital, and additional investments needed. Another program being offered by the Development Bank of the Philippines is the Disaster Risk Reduction under the Green Financing Program. The DBP's Green Financing Program provides financing and technical assistance to local government units, private corporations or enterprises, GOCCs, government agencies, cooperatives, associations, PFIs, MFIs, in the adoptions of disaster risk reduction measures. The program can be tapped to finance capital investments, including initial working capital, consulting services, and refinancing of existing operational projects. The local government units can also apply for a loan under this facility in order to finance the reconstruction, rehabilitation of damaged public infrastructures, particularly those that contribute to disaster resilience building. Finally, another program offered by the Development Bank of the Philippines is the Sustainable Healthcare Investment Program. This program offers credit program for healthcare investment projects that promote availability, accessibility, and affordability of healthcare services to people belonging to the lower income group. The local government units can apply for a loan under this facility to finance the reconstruction, rehabilitation, and upgrading of damaged public health hospitals and other related facilities such as the rural health units, the barangay health clinics, including the preparation of feasibility studies for new health facility to be constructed. In the case of the Home Development Mutual Fund or the Pag-ibig Fund, they offer Calamity Loan Fund. The program is offered for qualified Pag-ibig members in areas declared under state of calamity to avail loans equivalent to 80% of their total accumulated value. This can also be tapped by the local government units and implementing agencies in developing housing financial packages for the affected population that will supplement the regular housing programs of the National Housing Authority or the local government units. For the Social Housing Finance Corporation, These are the programs under that corporation. The first one is the Localized Community Mortgage Program. The program provides financial assistance to local government units in the acquisition of land occupied by informal settlers and land where informal settlers will be relocated for their socialized housing projects. The program can serve as support for local government units' post-disaster housing program, which requires that acquisition. Another program of the Social Housing Finance Corporation is the Abot Kaya Pabahay Fund Development Loan Program. The program can serve as support for local government units and national government for disaster housing programs, specifically for land development and housing construction. For the Small Business Corporation, they have the P3. This can be tapped by local government units and implementing agencies in developing livelihood-related financial assistance packages for the affected enterprises, particularly the micro, small, and medium enterprises. For the GSIS, they have an emergency loan program, which is offered to qualified members of the GSIS in areas affected by disasters and declared under the state of calamity. The loan program will serve as an accessible financial assistance for government employees to recover from their losses due to disaster. In a nutshell, these are the fund source options to finance disaster rehabilitation and recovery. Number one, we have the Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund of local government units. So this is the mandatory item of operation that should be complied with by the local government units in pursuance of Section 21 of the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010 or Republic Act number 10121. So under that provision of the law, the local government units are mandated to allocate at least 5% from regular sources to be set aside as NDRRMF to support various disaster risk management activities. So the approving authority for this fund source is the local government units, specifically the local sanggunian. The allowable projects are provided under the COA Circular 2012-2 and the DBM, NDRRMC, and DILG Joint Memorandum Circular number 2013-1 dated March 25, 2013. So the allocation for this fund is 30% should be allocated for QRF or Quick Response Fund, and the remaining 70% may be used for disaster prevention, mitigation, response, and reconstruction programs, projects, and activities. The second fund source option is the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund. Again, this is also provided under the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010 or RA number 10121. The local government units may also access the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund subject to the President's approval in accordance with the favorable recommendation of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council. So we also have the Quick Response Fund of selected implementing agencies as may be provided in the Annual General Appropriations Act. So the other local government units may donate some funds to the other local government units, and this is also consistent with the operative undertakings that may be undertaken by the local government units, consistent with Section 33 of the Local Government Code of 1991. And then the fifth fund source option is the Local Government Support Fund. So under the 2021 GAA, or Republic Act number 11518, there is an appropriation for the several components of the Local Government Support Fund, and one of which is the financial assistance to the local government units. So this fund can also be used for construction, concreting, or rehabilitation of selected infrastructures and insurance coverage for local government facilities against natural disaster or natural calamities. Another component of the Local Government Support Fund, which was introduced under the 2021 GAA, is the Disaster Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Assistance Program. So, under the General Appropriations Act for 2021, there is an appropriation for aid in the recovery and reconstruction of the economy and livelihood in the LGUs that are directly affected by the Taal volcano eruption, which happened in 2020, and the onslaught of typhoons Quinta, Rolly, and Ulysses, which hit the country at the tail end of year 2020. So this fund can be used for shelter and resettlements, public infrastructure projects such as roads, bridges, and flood control and public buildings and multi-purpose buildings, evacuation and quarantine facilities, education and health services, agriculture such as crops, livestock, and fisheries, and also social protection. Then for the seventh option, we have the Seal of Good Local Governance Incentive Fund, which is provided consistent with the Republic Act number 11292. So there is an incentive that may be given to high-performing local government units that meet the criteria provided under the Seal of Good Local Governance Act or Republic Act number 11292. So the approving authority for this program or fund source option is the DILG. So the fund may be used consistent with the policies governing the utilization of the 20% of the internal revenue allotment, which we know or commonly known as the 20% development fund. So essentially, the programs that may be funded out of the 20% development fund of local government units are those included in the local development programs and annual investment programs. So the uses of the Seal of Good Local Governance Incentive Fund and the 20% Development Fund are basically the same. So the local government units that are beneficiaries of this SGLC Incentive Fund may refer to the guidelines on the utilization and appropriation of the 20% Development Fund, which is the Joint Memorandum Circular issued on November 4 by the DBM, DILG, and the Department of Finance. Another option is the Kalahi Seeds of the DSWD. The DSWD and the World Bank program, which directly provides funds to community-identified service, delivery, and development projects. So this fund may be used for basic services, sub-projects, basic access, infrastructure, community common service facilities, environmental protection, and conservation. And the approving authority for this is the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD. We also have the People's Survival Fund, or PSF. So this is in accordance with Republic Act number 1074, or the People's Survival Fund Law. The local government units may receive funds for disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation projects directly from the national government. The approving authority for this fund is the Board of the People's Survival Fund upon recommendation of the Climate Change Commission. The allowable projects include those which are related to climate change adaptation projects and disaster mitigation initiatives. The third fund source option is the regular agency budget in accordance with the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010 or Republic Act number 10121. All departments, bureaus, offices, and agencies of the government are authorized to use a portion of their appropriations to implement projects designed to address disaster risk reduction and management activities in accordance with the guidelines issued by the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council in coordination with the Department of Budget and Management. Another funding option for local government units is the 20% Development Fund, which I mentioned earlier. So this is the mandatory item of appropriation of no less than 20% of the annual internal revenue allotment of local government units. So the legal basis for this fund is Section 287 of the Local Government Code of 1991, and the implementing guidelines is the DBM, DOF, DILG Joint Memorandum Circular Number 1, Series of 2020, or the revised guidelines on the appropriation and utilization of the 20% Development Fund. So essentially, the programs and projects that may be implemented by the local government units out of this 20% Development Fund are those necessary, appropriate, or incidental to the efficient and effective local governance and essential to the promotion of the general welfare of the people. So these uses of the 20% Development Fund were anchored on Section 16 of the Local Government Code of 1991, which provides for the general welfare clause for the communities in the local government units. Another option under this slide is the catastrophe deferred drawdown option or contingent credit. Upon the declaration of a state of national calamity by the President, the government has an option to draw upon this contingent credit. The proceeds will be for budget support, and government can in turn use to finance rehabilitation and recovery programs, projects, and activities. So the approving authority for this option is coursed through the Department of Finance. And this can be used for various rehabilitation and recovery projects as identified by the donor agency or agencies in coordination with the government. Another fund source option is the official development assistance. So, multilateral and bilateral aid agencies and other foreign governments may provide financial assistance either in the form of loans or grants to the national government or directly to the implementing agency or affected local government units. The approval of this official development assistance is coursed through the Department of Finance, and the proceeds can be used for various rehabilitation and recovery projects as identified by the donor agency or agencies in coordination with the Philippine government. Another option is the non-government organizations and private sector. So the NGOs and private sector may also provide financial assistance through donations to the national government or directly to the implementing agency or affected LGU, or they may implement the projects in the affected areas. So the approving authority for this is the organization concerned. So it can be the national non-government organization or private sector concerned. And the proceeds may also be used for various rehabilitation and recovery projects as identified by donor agency or agencies in coordination with the government. I would like to end the presentation by emphasizing that there are different fund source options that can be tapped into by implementing agencies and local government units to help address the challenges on fund availability, absorptive capacity, and other financing concerns. Specifically for local government units, consistent with the powers granted to them under the Local Government Code of 1991, there are a wide array of options that may be tapped by the local government units for their disaster rehabilitation and recovery funding requirements. And we do hope that the local government units will maximize these available options for their disaster risk reduction and management activities. So with that, allow me to thank all of you, and I hope for the safety of everyone.